So we're going to try and get, I'm going to ask you to join me as I invite each of these luminaries up on stage. Can I have you join me in giving a round of applause as I welcome Rajiv Dubey, the President HR of Mahindra, who has so kindly agreed. Thank you, Rajiv. I'm really overwhelmed and honored that you're here. So please join us on the stage. I'm going to take that first seat in the corner since I'm going to risk moderating all of you. I'm going to take that one. So please, if you can take the second seat. Thank you. Join me as I welcome Adil Malia on the stage. Put your hands together, please, for Adil Malia. Next, we've got, I presume most of you in the audience know Adil, the President HR SR. We typically don't call out Adil's designation because we're also used to working with him, but he is the President HR of the SR group. Next, join me and put your hands together for Prabir Jha, the Head of HR of Reliance Industries. And last but not the least, we have a CEO to join into the CXO panel discussion. Put your hands together for Himanshu Chakrabarti, CEO of the Mobile Stores. So like I said, this is really opportune, gentlemen. Thank you very much for agreeing to be on this panel. And, considering the topic of discussion here is change management, we decided to be able to pick your minds and ask you a few questions around change and change management and what's really going on with change management in India Inc., notwithstanding the fact that we're here to celebrate 12 success stories. So the theme of our conversation is going to be leaders as change managers, why change management is the most wanted competence for India Inc. And of course, we'll try and discover that during the course of our conversation. I don't know whether you agree whether change management is the most important competence in India Inc., but we'll try and get there as we go along. So let me try and take you back. I think we're all existing in this VUCA world where I don't believe organizations have a choice as far as change is concerned. And therefore, most organizations have executives who are attempting to address these challenges and complexities. And the most traditional approach to that is by tinkering around with processes and systems and organization designs and so on. So, that's where the traditional wisdom typically takes you to say, how can I do this to be able to enhance efficiencies and innovations and productivities and what have you inside the organization? And yet, behind closed doors, there are extensive conversations organizations are having around how this constant re-engineering, redefining, revamping is incessantly going on inside the organization and possibly not yielding the kind of results that organizations were actually seeking to come out of it. This constant conversation around how the kind of efficiencies or the results that you're actually expecting or the impact you're expecting on the market or your market share is not really accruing to the organization in the manner in which you'd really like it to pan out. And I think what's worse still is that there isn't even a common ground among the top leadership team to work in an integrated manner to be able to actually enable this change to really happen. And there are huge numbers of people down the line who are hugely confused about what's really going on with this constant revamping, constant change within the organization, that most people down the line are cynical about change. I'm going to try and share some statistics with you, and then we're going to go straight to you, Rajiv, to try and get your views on what's really going on as far as change is concerned. How is our leadership in India Inc. actually coping with change? So I'm going to go to some of the pieces that I have here. We've got a significant, and Raj mentioned that a while ago, significant number of change management efforts which actually fail, almost 70%. And I think Kotter popularized that through his book. And, we're all great Kotter fans, I must tell you, at the LNOD Roundtable, so the 70% number really kind of sticks. In a recent survey, this is a Deloitte study, HR leaders mentioned that they bring out as many as 5 change interventions within their organization over a period of almost 24 months and maybe more. And most of these don't actually accrue the kind of impact that they ought to have within organizations. Can I have your response to this, Rajiv?
Yeah. So I think can you hear me? Okay, fine. I don't know whether you said it or somebody else said it. They asked this question, can you hear me at the back? And voice came, no, I can't, but carry on nevertheless. Okay, so I think the most important thing is to understand why change and what kind of change. And to have an understanding of the key business rationale. I think why a lot of change efforts fail is that it is seen as somebody else's job. And those people who are involved in the change don't passionately feel the need for that change. So I think for any change program to succeed, you have to be very clear, and it's not only the person at the top or somebody in the middle, and certainly not only the HR department on the need for change, but to have a totally clear understanding of why that change is required and what the pace of that change is and what the manifestation of that change will be and why it is absolutely critical to have that change, because if you don't have that change, then we are all going to be dead. And I think that is where a lot of change management efforts falter, because there isn't clarity about the why and the what and how soon, and why if you don't do it, you're going to be dead. So that's what I'd like to say about change. You shouldn't have change for the sake of change,
Sure.
but there has to be a very powerful, compelling business reason, and there has to be a very widespread understanding and commitment to that change.
Sure.
And having said that, finally, it's a long-term process. It's not a 100-meter dash. It's more like a marathon race, and so you got to go in and be prepared for the long run. Be prepared to fall down many times.
Sure.
And then pick yourself up again, and then keep walking, and fall down again, and then keep walking. And
I'm going to come back to this point of picking up and falling down and starting again, because we're going to try and touch upon that as well, which is when there is a tendency to keep going back to a change efforts that's already failed before. And if any of you have experience around that area, which is, having driven some change which has not worked out, what is the appetite within the organization to go back to try and drive that change again?
Yeah. And finally, if I may say so, we are so obsessed with finding answers that we don't spend enough time on the question. Mm-hmm. So I think it is really important, that's implicit in what I said, to have your questions right. Which are the questions that you want to answer?
Sure.
Because I think too often we rush into a torrent of answers.
Sure.
And without having identified the real or the important questions.
Sure. I'm going to pass over to Adil. Adil, my question to you is, how much of this failure has got to do with the leadership? How much accountability should leadership take for this kind of failure?
See, it's a very funny thing. We talk about WooCover, we write about WooCover, but if you see the normal response of human leadership, predominantly we are obsessed with this passing over phenomenon. This is a passing phase, it's going to pass away, things will become normal in a short while. There are some 5 economic factors and 3 technological factors which will move away in this way. We are waiting for election to happen, and then the government will come up with the new norms and things will change in the marketplace. And we keep believing that there are some divine forces which are working, which do not really require you to do anything other than keep your head low, and the problem will pass away. We love to play this corporate with-then people. We continue to sleep, and we continue to do the same thing over and over again, even in a new context and a new challenge. Right, he says kafir, and let me quote, he says, है सौ के सफर इतना कि एक मुद्दत से हमने मंजिल भी न पाई और रास्ता भी न बदला. We did not reach our destination, and we continued on the same road, yet expecting that we will reach some destination at a point of time. So number one, stop being a Rip Winkle. If you go to sleep for 20 years, when the change is happening in the universe, you have no right to be waking up suddenly and saying, okay, let me bring about the change in the universe that I'm looking at. The second is that we have failed in corporates to realize that change is not only about facing disasters, but change is also about facing opportunities, because VUCA world, by virtue of shifting of its economic power, is providing fantastic new opportunities which need to be captured. Therefore, you can't be thinking only in terms of saving or insulating yourself, and that is what change management is all about. So how would you insulate yourself in a changed environment? That's one, to avoid disasters. But the second is there is a growing opportunity, a market that is there for you to capture if you change your processes. We don't think of that. So the third is we don't build, leadership fails to build a binding coalition. Which is the leadership that has to be brought together? Who are the like-minded people? Does your management know about what you're doing? Or are you a single hero who's trying to bring about a change without the top buying into it? Is the top supporting and blessing the change movement? We don't try to build that coalition. The very beautiful thing is that we do reverse vision. We start with the change initiatives without a clarity of our vision. We do not communicate that vision to our people. And then at some point of time, we try to backward re-engineer what the vision would be. When actually we have gone deep into the journey without identifying, without using the larger engagement process of the people to identify what is the real need.
Sure.
So the people don't really buy into your need. You have halfway gone into the journey of trying to bring about the change agenda. Then suddenly someone is, this is not our problem, and then you suddenly find yourself at a time. So amongst many other things, these are some. And the last thing I would say is why it fails is we love to leadership needs to learn to walk on sand before it learns to sleep in silk. We love to get into our comfort zones, into the nice rajai that we have in our house, love to sleep in our silk rajais, before we really learn how to walk the trouble zone of getting deep into the sand and realizing what the real change is all about. We do a few steps and then relax about it and then don't cut the last mile. That is what the leadership change failures are all about.
Thank you, Adil. I'm going to move on to Prabir. Prabir, you've just joined, you've just started off on, I would imagine, one of the most challenging assignments in India Inc. You're driving a massive change agenda. How much of this would you attribute to the quality of leadership, and whatever are the early wins that you've been able to see or from your past experiences, how much of this is leadership dependent is what I want to ask.
Well, it's very interesting to okay, let me rewind. I said a few words. It's a very good question. I think very clearly it does start and resonate with leadership thinking. There is no doubt. And I'll kind of steal on some of the points that were made by Rajiv and Adil. What is the need for change? We are back to the same question. And change for whom? Change at what trade-offs? If everything was a simple algorithm, life was easy. But there are trade-offs. And that is what hurts. Either there's a near-term hiccup that you need to tolerate. There are painful decisions of exiting some good business lines that have helped you in the past, but they don't make sense. But there's a lot of history and sensitivity. There could be people-related decisions.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, what is the need for change? And to what vision is leadership playing is very clearly a leadership agenda. Buying in all stakeholders, including the guy in the trenches, is to me a leadership responsibility. It's not good enough to say, this is really where the world we will be in, because the person is not able to connect with that. So I think building the excitement, building the compulsion to change, buying in people to that shared vision is a journey, like both my colleagues have mentioned. The bigger challenge that I see about change is your own resolve to absorb the failures, the setbacks, the criticism. Because change takes time to sink in. Change takes time for you to say, this was worth it. Sure. And I honestly feel that not every breed of leadership has that gumption to absorb that. Either there'll be an immediate hiccup and you say, let's go back to the old world. So to me, it is very squarely a leadership agenda, your resolve to kind of absorb that. And at the end of the day, people look at actions, people look at cues very closely. We underestimate the power of, literally the leadership messaging. And any change from what was your original posture is enough to kind of offset the entire change agenda. So it's very, very important. I mean, from my own experience, I was very happy to see that, and I was there at the event. 2 of the 12 companies are companies that I have been the CHRO of and been involved with. So if I were to just steal that rather than talk about the current challenges that we are trying to face in Reliance and the change effort that we are doing, which is, in all honesty, there's a lot more euphoria. It's too early. Sure. I'll be very honest about it. We still have a long way to go. But one of the big things that I have found in in change efforts is the ability of the organization to be able to communicate with their people and not to their people.
Sure.
And we can talk more about that, but it's a very important
Sure.
issue that if communication lines, because
Yes.
people understand for their reasons, not for the reasons of leadership.
Sure.
And this is squarely a leadership responsibility to make sure that you're able to loop it back and say, you know what, they are understanding the way we thought they were supposed to understand. And
Sure.
normally we don't. Maybe it's our arrogance or maybe it's our rush to kind of chalk off milestones.
Sure.
It doesn't happen as well.
Sure.
Actually, this
So,
communication is not about sending out a set of circulars
Sure.
and messages. When you are talking about change, do your processes communicate the change agenda? Or you continue to do the same old processes, but your express messages are different? And that's
Sure.
where organizational schizophrenia comes in.
right. So, I'm going to pick from what the two of them said and hand this over to Himanshu. I mentioned earlier we're all Kotter fans here. And one of the things that Kotter says is that change occurs when you speak to the feelings of people and not when you speak to systems and processes. And one of the biggest errors that organizations make or leaders make when they try to drive change is they think if they change a few and tinker around with a few things here and there, but they've not tried to address how people feel about things, that's when you don't. And he says this in The Heart of Change, in his book called The Heart of Change, that it's all about feelings. I want to know from your end, you've just driven a massive turnaround and change agenda within the mobile store, and I'm sure you've done similar kind of work in your very illustrious career in the past. Can you pick from there and tell us how valid is this?
No, I think it's very important. One of the things that I think Rajiv started by saying what and why. I think those two are very important questions. But typically, when a need for change is figured out, there are essentially two responses that organizations have. It's an immediate reaction. The first is hire a consulting firm to look at the issue, and the second one is change the leader. There are two
Right.
which are absolutely top on the agenda.
Right.
Yeah, one of the two
Yes.
things are carried out. Now, you look at the two things. Yeah, the management consulting firms, and I have nothing against them. Sorry if there's anybody in the audience. By and large, are Excel boys. They can analyze supermarkets to FMCG, to pharmaceutical industry, to Lafarge Steel, cement. They can analyze any industry.
Sure.
So therefore, there is no heart or soul. Why are they Excel boys? Because they look at it very dispassionately, which is nice and good.
Sure.
Excel boys typically, I'll give you an example. When the book industry was reeling in both the Americas and UK, the two companies, I'm leaving out Barnes & Noble, but let's look at Borders in US and Waterstones in the UK. They had two different treatments. One got a consulting firm, the other one got a new CEO. Waterstones, for example, got a CEO who came in from a supermarket background. What does the supermarket do? Supermarket works on Pareto principle. So he applied the same Pareto principle in the book industry. Anybody who's a reader would immediately know what is the downside of the Pareto principle if you apply it in a bookstore chain. So that is one set of things. The other one is when you take a new leader, you change the old leader, you get a new one. What does the leader knows that everybody is looking at him?
Sure.
The board is looking at him, whoever is the shareholder, everybody is looking at him. So the first instinct, looking at these bulbs here, sare ghar ke badal dunga, is the first instinct.
Sure.
Yeah, and this, while the what and why and becomes important, and how we go about doing it, is very important at that point of time to really ignore all the noise which is around and really look at what the issues are and take small baby steps at a time. I've seen this is not the first organization. I've had one more before this.
Yes.
Baby steps at a time. So you will then get two kinds of reactions. Now, one of the things that happened in the mobile store, multiple issues, cash flow issues, etc., etc. We've lived with it, we'll live with it, and we'll make the changes. There are two little issues. One was, there was the relationship between the organization and the employee was that of a benefactor and a beneficiary. It is a contractual arrangement between the employer and the employee. There is no benefactor-beneficiary relationship. So the first set of arguments after 2-3 months I had was, you need to give little things, sorry I'm taking time, you need to give the details of salary to each individual, incentive, how it is calculated to each individual, and each individual has a right to challenge that. You're not doing any favor to anybody. So we changed that equation and we started sending it took 4-5 months because nobody was willing to do it. The second little step which is there is, lots of people in our network, and that empathy becomes important. They earn 8,000, that time 6, 7,000, now 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 rupees. There is at the beginning of the month, it may not impact people like us, electricity bill, milk bill, etc., etc. Salary needs to be paid on time. This company last 33 months we have paid on the first day of the month without fail, irrespective of the cash flow situation of the company. Now, these little things when you do, then, and these are important, not little, they're actually important. Then there's a quid pro quo and an alignment. And you'll also have people who are not aligned. At a point of time, you need to take a call whether you want them along with you or you don't want them along with you.
Sure.
Yeah, but as far as possible, baby steps, and that's what I have done. Not necessarily it'll hold in every environment,
Right.
but that's the steps that we have taken.
Right. Great. I'm going to turn this over to something that he said, which is sparked off really the next thread for me, which is, either change, like he said, get a consultant or change the leader. How much of, how much do you think, of the failure that we're really seeing here is because we expect to change outcomes by changing leaders? And I'm going to take this thread on sustainability, because one of the reasons why I believe change efforts really fail, and I want to know your perspective and your views on this, is because people down the line are completely cynical about anything that's happening because they feel it's a new leader and a new flavor. And they're waiting for it to pass because they know there's going to be the next leader with the next flavor. And so it never really aligns, or it never gets bought down the line. And there's no real change actually happening, to use your terminology, in the trenches, because nobody really believes in the change. What is your own, I'll turn this over to Prabir first. Prabir, what is your view on sustainability? How does one sustain this, especially in a context where there is a tendency to want to change the leader?
So let me first share with all of us here that it's not always with a change of leader. I have known leaders who actually are as fickle. And that's the bigger problem. The leader remains, but everything keeps changing. So the troops don't really know,
Sure.
Is this really the change you need? And how sustained would that need be? See, I go back to, I think, the point that Rajiv made, and I personally feel that that's very important. Change of leader by itself is neither a sin nor a virtue. Sometimes it's very important. It makes a huge difference because either there are blind spots, the guy is kind of tired, the guy is a prisoner of his own past successes. So it's good to change leaders, it's good to get fresh perspective, and not change the leader for the sake of changing leader, but there is a lot. I mean, I personally believe that if I were to continue the same job for 10 years, I will start defending what I did 10 years back. I mean, it's human nature. I think the larger question is, are you able to understand that not every change is going to be Maggi 2-minute noodles? Because most substantive changes take time.
Sure.
And again, the tenacity, the willingness to live with that is something many corporations do not have. And it has nothing to do with a new leader and an old leader.
Sure.
I think the challenge that corporates have is that at one level, you want, as a wish list, everything to change. It should be Cinderella tomorrow. But you honestly don't want to go through the pain or the risk of any hiccup. Now, we all know the hockey stick. We all intellectually understand change. And the best of leaders understand that even better. But the emotional commitment, absorbing the trauma of change. For example, the same people that you've kind of found very relevant to a cause may actually be redundant because you've changed your vision or you've changed your outlook.
Sure.
Will you bite the bullet? And these are cultural issues. Hire, fire, who works, who does not work. Will you get in a set of people but actually have long shadows remain? Are you willing to kind of bite the bullets? So these are challenges that are very important. It's, so fickle-mindedness is not about the change outcome.
Right.
Fickle-mindedness is about, again, the metaphors of change. Are you actually building on it, or are you switching? Because then the change agenda never actually happens.
Right.
So, I mean, these are practical I'll be very honest, Sujay. I don't think change is as complex as we try to talk about. Personally, if you ask me. Fundamentally, like management is fundamentally very simple. Change is fundamentally very simple. Part of it, maybe I'll join your party. Part of it is we make it so Excel sheet and PowerPoint and, 992 slide presentation.
Right.
Ultimately, it's simple. And the guy what do relevant stakeholders want? They want to know, what do you want me to change?
Right.
How will I know that I am doing well? What is the support you will give me?
Sure.
3 simple answers if leadership can explain in a language and metaphor that stakeholder understands, your home. But I think we are not able, and that's the challenge of leadership.
Right. So, you're making a point here saying that, it's not so complex. We're overcomplicating it as professionals. Most people have this competence. Most leaders understand it intellectually. I'm going to share some research with you. There's a recent CCL study that found that 4 most important skills capabilities required by organizations in the future are leading people, strategic planning, inspiring commitment, and managing change. And they're among the weakest competencies that are available in individuals today. And these are across countries, across organizations. Each of these studies have covered as many as 15,000 leaders, 28,000 leaders across geographies. There's another one here. These findings suggest organizations should continue to seek more of a balance between developing leaders through individual competencies. So that's what CCL is really saying, that you can't only be developing individual competencies, there have to be collective competencies that you really need to develop. So I want to comment on that. So why don't you comment on this?
Very quickly.
Yeah.
I still maintain that, just read the lines, leading people. What's so complex about it at one level? It's not complex. We make it complex. We make it complex because we believe my style is a style irrespective of the context. That is what adds to complexity. Similarly, the other elements. I think the point that you mentioned in the second one is important. What is the collective organizational capability to be able to drive change?
Right.
And that organizational capability, unfortunately, doesn't get built because we cannot get out of our strong personality, individual, egos and biases.
Right.
And I'm, for example, I like...
And I must say it's validated by research.
It is.
That your turf wars in your silos and the inability of leadership teams to be able to work as a team and to have a concerted view on what the change ought to be is half the reason why change efforts.
And one book that I personally revere a lot is Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And he talks about trust. And I dare say the problem with most leadership teams, there is no trust.
Rajiv, would you come in there and tell me, do you agree with that? Do you think it's actually got to do with leadership teams? And the lack of trust, as he's pointing out.
So, okay. I sort of agree and I don't agree with everything that has been said, right? But coming to the trust part, what I mean to say is there is no one answer. There are all kinds of things, and you have to... a big mistake that you can make is to try and go into a situation with a cookie cutter answer. Okay, so and I think that point is coming through, that you have to be able to relate to what is required and you have to spread it. Okay, now coming back to your question about trust, I personally believe that if you get everything right, vision, strategy, working on various HR levers, but there is no trust in the organization, then you can never really get anything great going, right? So the question is, how do you create trust?
Right.
And I think, and I go back to the simple view of life, that you create trust in an organization if the leader, and this actually doesn't mean only the guy at the top, there are plenty of leaders at all levels, say what they think and do what they say. And do it again and again and again. It is about authenticity.
Right.
It is about credibility. It is about walking the talk. It's about removing the mask.
Sure.
You see, and if we are genuine, I think we create trust. And if we have created trust, then everything else really starts firing, right? Now, is it complex? Is it simple? Depends on how you define complex, depends on how you define simple, so I won't get into that. But I can for sure tell you from my experience, I have worked 40 years, I have run businesses, I have been involved in several turnarounds, and the one thing that has always been involved as a crucial factor is trust and whether people are walking the talk.
Right.
So I would give very, very high dominance to that bit, not to take away from the other things that are said. And the basic one is why is it that we need to do what we are saying? And what does it mean for me? And why is it so crucial?
Sure. So, I'm glad you touched upon personal credibility because we're going to come to that when we talk about competencies. Adil, I've got this right management research here where they actually went out and asked a whole lot of organizations across geographies, what do they believe are the true levers for change? And here's the research with where most of the employees who responded back to this survey believe that their senior leadership lacked the ability to be able to drive change effectively. So one of the levers for change was the ability of the senior leadership to drive change effectively, and most of the respondents came back and saying this is an absent competence within my organization, or it's not absent, there's a huge gap there in terms of most of my leaders having the ability to be able to drive change effectively. I'm going to turn this conversation around in terms of competence of change management. What is your own view? Prabir seemed to believe that intellectually most leaders seem to understand what change management entails, but they're not able to actually convert that practically. What is your view? What do you see as the components of the competence of change management? And what do you see as a problem in terms of what are people finding missing in their leaders as far as change management competence is concerned?
So two comments I want to combine, and in fact I want to answer this question by answering also the two other questions. What is the experience of the people in an organization about leadership? Either when a leader comes in, he says, "Sare badal dalunga," nahi to apna ghar badal dalunga. So if there is no sustainability of the leader who is supposed to be the sponsor of change, and the leader himself is seen as, I'm going to be changing myself within 3 to 5 years, but I want the rest of the organization to believe in my agenda that I'm going to be sponsoring, but what if he goes away? Is he driving the right thing? So number one is that sustainability of the sponsoring leadership is very, very critical. Secondly, organizations make a great mistake. Whenever there is failure of an organization, there is emergence of a leader. Take any political party. Parties fail, look forward to one leader who's supposed to be the savior of the organization, and then that is the indication whether it is a leader-led organization or organization-generated leadership. These problems come because we have overplayed the role of leadership in the change agenda. What if the leader was to pop it? Should the country tomorrow stop its growth agenda if a Jawaharlal Nehru was to die? Or an Indira Gandhi died, and should the country give up its agenda for growth? Therefore, does the enterprise have an ability to manage by itself to generate leadership at multiple levels in the enterprise which can facilitate the change agenda that it is taking on? Or is it only one leader led who is driving an agenda through a powerful kind of either recitation, communication, appealing, stirring up, or pushing his way through to bring that agenda? That is the most important. What organizations need is a bespoke culture which creates an environment creating leadership at all the levels of the pyramid such that leadership is self-driven in that enterprise and is not one leader dependent when the change is to be brought about.
All right. Himanshu? Sorry. Yeah, Rajiv.
So, my friend, I agree with you. But at the same time, and I'm sure you're not suggesting that the leader's role is not important. What you're saying is necessary but not sufficient.
The leader's role is to build that environment.
Yeah, because I used to believe 10 years ago, I used to believe that it is structures, processes, systems, strategy, and it doesn't matter what the leader, the guy at the top, what he says or thinks and does. And now I realize that you can have the same structure, same processes, same everything, and you change the guy at the top, and he thinks or feels differently, and you get completely different results. So I think I just wanted to add, Adil, that I agree with what you said, but I still think that the guy at the top makes a huge difference.
Sure, and his role is to create that environment where there is leadership growing at all levels, not dependent on the
Right. Okay.
It's very interesting Rajiv made this point because, I had this conversation with one of my chief executives in my career. And, there's a lot of fondness for a lot of chief executives to have consultants come in and give you processes, systems, frameworks, methods, and you think it's done. And exactly the point that you mentioned, Rajiv, was the conversation I had. And this is actually a live experience I went. You don't have the right leader or leaders, depending on how deep you want to go. And you have the best processes. There is no way anything is going to change in the company.
Sure.
And the challenge of leaders, and maybe that's another agenda conversation, but including in the context of change, Sujaya, is how do you therefore develop leadership of the kind that Adil you seem to be alluding to, which is pro-change, we can anticipate change, which can, it's not always about reacting, but then it becomes the DNA of the organization.
Sure.
And I think this is very important because somewhere our belief on the cerebral structure of change is so strong that we just seem to assume that that in place and change is done. It never ever happens.
Yeah, corporate world has experienced that a powerful, successful leader from one system has moved over to another system in the same powerful role and not succeeded.
Sure.
And which is why Boris Groysberg and all of them have written books like Don't Chase the Stars, because stars are suitable and successful in a given culture, in a given system, in a given process.
Right.
But it does not mean that if you change as a successful leader and go into another organization, automatically your leadership style, which I presume remains same,
Right.
is going to give the same results.
All right, I'm going to turn that over to Himanshu. Himanshu, what's your experience? Do you believe this is a lacking competence? Have you found people out of depth in terms of being able to drive change? Practically as CEO, how do you see your leadership teams, or how do you see most leadership teams? Are they ready for this agenda?
Yeah, I think change in the sense that as long as they can see, so there are two things that happen. The first one is, as I said, you need to take baby steps, assuming we're not talking about very quick steps to make all kinds of changes. Even in baby step syndrome, the game cannot be a chess kind of game, pawn, king, 4, and then everybody else is guessing what the next move would be.
Right.
And many a times, one of the difficulties which is there is that the organization or even the level below, whichever level you're talking about,
Sure.
is guessing and double guessing what the next round of moves is going to be.
Sure.
It is extremely important from my own experience I've seen, lay out the full, some of it may be palatable, some of
Sure.
it may not be, and you're not going to carry out the whole thing in one shot in any case.
Right.
But to the extent possible, unless and until there's some step which is really you can't do, to the extent possible, you need to lay out the whole agenda. And you may not engage on the last or the second last or the third last step, but lay out the agenda. It is transparent. It should not come as otherwise the whole organization is guessing. And one of the critical things in this is, specifically when you talk about change requires not necessarily, let's say, chip and chop, but also requires some changes in terms of people.
Sure.
And the worst thing that you can have is mera number kab aayega. And it is a reality, yeah.
Right.
And that syndrome is really terrible. Not
Sure.
only for jiska number aane wala hai, but for
Yes.
everybody else. Because everybody is double guessing mera number kab aayega.
Sure.
So this whole thing, which is in terms of laying out this thing, and then people get involved. Not everybody will get involved. This is really
Sure.
to believe that everyone will be involved and completely buy in, etc.
Sure.
But if you get a significant number of people who understand the what, the why, and how it is to be done,
Yes.
and add to the process,
Yes.
even if you have a smaller number of people who are not, some of them change over a period of time,
Sure.
some of them don't change over a period of time.
Sure.
But to assume that one leader without the involvement of the rest of the people can drive the agenda, that's not possible.
You're right. I'm going to turn this over to the audience. Can we have some mics out to the audience, please, the volunteers? Anyone in the audience who'd like to make a point on the discussion so far? We've got Pramod Sadar Joshi putting his hand up. I've got somebody else there at the back. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
one aspect
yes.
as we go to them is that somewhere down the line in the entire discussion we have missed out identifying and saying that culture plays a very, very important part in the change management.
Right.
And I keep saying this, that culture eats all change strategy for breakfast.
Right.
So any change strategy which is not bespoke to the culture of the enterprise, which is not in line with the character of the enterprise,
Sure.
is not going to be thriving. And therefore the leader's role is to either use the culture effectively to bring the change or try and work towards bringing a cultural change.
Right, and we look at more of that in thread 3 because we're talking about sustaining change successfully. Let's turn this over to Pramod. What are your comments? It doesn't have to be a question. If you have a question for the panel, you're welcome. It can just be a comment from the floor. Pramod?
So firstly, heartiest congratulations to the 12 company. It's been an amazing success story. Congrats to you research for the
Thank you.
I think one of the most defining statements, and I'm on a vector is a better word, but change management was said as follows: be the change that you want to bring about. And we all know who said it. Question to the panelists: is one of the reasons for change management I think somebody quoted Quarter saying 70% some data set that they want to see. Is one of the reasons for that is the leader, CEO, family member, government, state politician. He does not follow the diktat or the vector of be the change. He operates from an I'm okay, you're not okay approach.
Right.
So I remain as I am, you
Right.
change. And
Right.
therefore, I think Rajiv said this, or Prabir said this, the whole credibility process is gone.
Right.
Is that one of the
So
reasons I would like
role
to know?
model change is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Does the leader role model
Yeah.
the change?
And
All
one
right.
thing which Prabir brought about was, you're right, it's simple management and leadership. Just like to add, what is simple is not necessarily easy.
Sure.
Simplicity is confused with easiness.
Right.
That's probably one of the reasons. So comment from any one of the panel members on be the change you want to bring about, not being implemented. How do we ensure that? Thank you very much.
Good point. Yeah, I think simplicity actually, most people make the mistake of believing that simplicity precedes complexity. It's actually when someone's actually engaged with the complexity that you can actually make it that simple. It's a good point there, Pramod. We had a hand up from the back, yeah? Can we get the mic across to him?
So can I just
Yes.
respond, because responses are not ruled out.
Yes, absolutely. No, go ahead.
So I think you've raised a very, very fundamental point, that if the people at the top and the others who are involved in the change process are not living out the change that they are proposing others to do, things won't work. And I think it's going back to the being part. And I think it's about the real intention about who we are that is coming to the fore, the purpose, if you like, right? And the being. So going back to this good old knowing, doing, being alignment. Knowing is well addressed, doing we struggle to do it. The being part and how well it is aligned, because that is really the source. And that is really the source of the energy and the credibility is absolutely, totally, critically important. And I think that if that is not there, it will be really difficult to drive any significant transformation.
And that links
Right.
purpose-pointed trust.
Right.
It is about us walking the talk.
Is the bane of the crux of all the work.
Right. Can we hear the gentleman at the back? Yes.
Hi, this is Vishal from Wipro. My question to the panel was, when you want individuals to change versus when you want a collective to change, which is a team or a group, are the approaches different, principles different, and would you address it differently?
Trust Vishal, you to ask tough questions. At one level, you've got to kind of look at it a little differently, because it's the same thing that just the additive of all individuals does not necessarily create a collective. But I think what's important to get started is to actually make sure that the key individuals, because in every collectivity there are certain people who are the sutradhars. And I think it's very important for those sutradhars to actually change. Because, there are, in any change exercise, about 50% of people are fence sitters. They are happy to go either side. If things are happening right, I'm happy to change. If things are not happening right, I'm happy to remain the way it is. So I think, as you get to a very collective, change construct, I think the very important thing is how do you get these so-called individual key lampposts or, chieftains of, change to actually demonstrate that change. And that is what starts the change exercise. It is very rare that, you've converted, the foot soldiers and the generals change and then we have a collectivity. It typically doesn't happen. And therefore, my experience has been that if you were to do a demographic slice of your change constituency, in every slice, there will be some people who are these sutradhars. They are not all at the top, but at every segment, there will be, if you can get them to start kind of changing, I think the collective transition becomes a lot easier and simple.
You're right. I don't want to lose the opportunity of some absolutely fabulous minds we have in the audience. So I'm going to take the liberty to be able to have the mic passed on across to Rajesh Padmanabhan. Can we have your views on what we're discussing so far?
Gentlemen, will definitely not ask you a question, but will share a viewpoint or a perspective. We've been hearing the word change possibly for 50 times this particular evening. And a lot of stuff is coming in terms of, drawing peripheries and boundaries and judgments and viewpoints, because it comes from situations. And just a viewpoint, from some of the stuff that I have seen, don't worry about the beginning of the thread and the end of the thread, just pick up the thread. Just a point to say that it's going to be unstructured, the world is never going to be ideal. We're all sharing viewpoints and learning from experiences. There's never an ideal world. We continue to live in this particular unstructured world. So just a point. Yeah, thanks.
You're right, great. Can we pass on the mic to Mr. Vivek Paranspe? So can we have a comment from you? It's here.
Well, on change management, in fact, one thing I learned way back, about a decade back, that there is no need for us to talk about change management, because change has become part and parcel of our life. And when it has become part and parcel of our life, and most of the people in leadership or otherwise are open to the idea of change, they just don't know what to change, but they're all open to the idea of change.
Sure.
So it's just a question of making a case for a change.
Right.
Good old days, we had a lot of difficulty convincing for people to change, but now I don't think that's a difficulty at all. People know they need to change and they'll change. That's pretty easy. Life has become very easy today when it comes to change management.
Okay, that's heartening to hear. Can I request you to pass on the mic to Anand Pillai? We have the opportunity to have the Chief Learning Officer of Reliance Group here. Anand, why don't you tell us from a competence perspective, what do you see as the constituents of change management as a competence? And do you agree with some of this research that we have up, that most employees believe that they don't see their leaders managing change effectively?
Yeah, I was actually, while the discussion was going on, I was reminded of a quote and I tweeted in a different context. Yeah, yeah, I just tweeted about it. The quote is, the hardest problem that our children face today is learning good manners when they don't see any. That applies to organizations as well. The hardest problems our employees are facing is learning the new changed behaviors when they don't see any in the organization. And I like what Prabir said, we need to learn to communicate with the employees rather than to the employees. Coming back to your specific question, the competency actually is there in the people, in the leaders. If you actually look at it, leaders change from one organization to the other organization. They change from one industry to another industry. Change management is there as a competency when it comes to applying to themselves.
Sure.
But the difficulty is if you go up to Ram Charan's model, managing self and managing others and then managing the organization.
Sure.
I personally believe the challenge lies in the person will have the ability to change himself or herself to a large extent, but his or her ability to change others and change the organization is where the big competency gap is. And we'll have to struggle and learn with that. So it's wrong to say people are not good in change. They change cities to cities,
Good
whatever,
point.
But I bring that analogy with Ram Charan, saying that, changing others and changing the organization is where the challenge is.
Is where the challenge is. Great point. Great point.
The most important competence is the competence of influence. Are we able to influence change? Because whether it is a single person who has to go through a change, or it is a change of the collective consciousness of the enterprise that you are trying to work on.
Sure.
Are you able to influence them in multiple ways to make the change that you want to see in them?
Sure.
And most leaders tend to fail out because influencing itself has so many dimensions, communications, convincing, walking the talk, role modeling, etc.
Sure.
So the critical competence is competence of influence,
Right.
which leads to ability to change.
Right. Great point. I'm going to pass this over to my dear friend Prince Augustine, who's in the audience. Prince, what is your view on our discussion so far, particularly as change management is a competence? How can we actually build this as a competence inside our organizations?
See, it is quite a difficult question, because most aspects of change has already been discussed, right? But the most difficult thing is when you have got mental maps which are not conducive to the change that is taking place, or there are wooden-headedness in people, organizations, cultures, systems, processes. When those things come, it becomes quite complex,
Sure.
right? Otherwise, managing a normal change, as Adil had said, it's all about influencing.
Sure.
But when it comes to mental maps, wooden-headedness, it's all about be the change that you want
Sure.
to be, as one of the gentlemen had put it.
Yes.
And also getting into the inner root of the organization.
Right.
Finding out why you want to change. Is the
Yes.
change to create a strategic shift or
Sure.
change for the sake of change?
Right. Raj, you teach change management in so many schools. Would you like to give us a comment? How do you build change management as a competence within the organization?
I don't know, maybe the traditional route of taking people through what comprises the imperatives for change, which behaviors will bring this change about, aligning it with the strategy and organizational purpose, taking into cognizance what the external imperatives and challenges are,
Sure.
and thereby, bit by bit, developing those competencies and keeping a track on whether those are being built adequately.
Right. I'm going to turn this over to the panel. One tip from each of the panelists on how do you build the competency of change management? Any ideas?
So, Sujaya, one of the things, and I agree with a lot of ideas that came around, I think even to champion change, the willingness to be vulnerable is key. There is nothing which supports authenticity better than being vulnerable.
Sure.
The best of change leaders do not have every answer to every question today, or as the questions will emerge. Every change leader will have reasons to fall and stumble.
Sure.
Every change leader will have issues to make some wild card move.
Right.
But is the leader willing to be vulnerable? And I think, therefore, the willingness to develop vulnerability, and the bigger the leader, bigger the problem, right? So it sounds very counterintuitive, because at one level we feel that the change manager must feel that I'm
In
absolutely
charge.
sure that I'm in charge, which is good, but at the same time, nothing makes a change or a strength for change sharper than the willingness to be vulnerable, and that's one thing.
In
Rajiv?
fact, far from sounding paradoxical or something that is a contradiction, I think this is the very essence of change that I want to let go of control, to see 1,000 flowers bloom, to let an energy and a momentum develop, which is 1,000 times greater than what you can do by seeking to control. So giving up control, letting go, and actually getting a joy out of seeing 1 million energies develop, provided you have some kind of an overall goal. I think that is actually the essence, and if you don't do it, especially in the VUCA world, it's not going to happen.
Right. I'm going to try and bring this discussion to a happy closure by asking each of our panelists who have such outstanding, illustrious backgrounds, experiences across organizations, to try and leave the audience with one thought, one idea on how they can sustain change successfully within their own organization. So we start with you, Rajiv.
I already said it, to let go and to see the change that you are trying to be and which you are trying to act out become the change that everybody else is.
Okay.
Let 1,000 flowers bloom.
You're right. I'm guessing that's the best way to sustain change in an organization. All right. Adil?
Influence the change that you want to see.
Okay.
If you want to see it, take your step back. Don't bring too much of you into that, but try and influence the change that you want to see.
Right. Prabir?
Remain authentic and honest and straight.
All right. Himanshu?
Work with the team and just cut out the noise. There's too much noise. You can't carry out change with noise.
You're right. Please give this panel a round of applause. Yeah, Rajiv Dubey, Adil Malia, Prabir Jha, and Himanshu Chakravarti, you've been splendid to talk to. Thank you so much for indulging me and agreeing to do this panel discussion. I'm going to